Good to go?
So
Tonight is the 72nd yard site of the previous Rebbe. And even though formally, a year later, the first yard site, that's when the Rebbe assumed the leadership and accepted the mantle and became Rebbe. But really, is the moment that Tzaddik passes away, the next moment, the Rebbe assumes the sun sets and the sun rises. So tonight is a very auspicious day. It's this was always a very special day, Chabad. The Rebbe would lead us in the davening and do a lot of extra learning. We learn the Mishnayos, learn the Hasidic discourse. One of the few times in the year we will all go to the oil and write a note, and it was a time of introspection. After a full day of this intense preparation, you went to the mikveh before, and you were fasting when you went to the oil. It was just a very special day, and imagine everyone in the crowd went through an entire day of very intense spiritual preparation, and the crowning experience was the Farbrengen. At the end, at night, the Rebbe would Farbrengen. Tomorrow night, the Rebbe would Farbrengen. And the highlight of the Farbrengen was the Hasidic discourse, Basi Lagani. This was the Maimer, actually a group of Maimarim. The previous Rebbe left. The previous Rebbe passed away on Shabbos, Yud Shvat, which was a boy. And he left a Hasidic discourse, a few Hasidic discourses with 20 chapters. Every year, the Rebbe would focus on a different chapter. But when the Rebbe said the Hasidic discourse, Basi Lagani, that's when, with that, he assumed the leadership. He formally accepted becoming Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe. And it's a very, very special mimer, very powerful mimer. And in this mimer, this was like the last will and testament of the previous Rebbe. And this mimer, this was the blueprint, the roadmap, everything that would follow. And basically, this mimer, discusses where it all began. Yud Shvat is like a day where the past, tonight, tomorrow, is where the past, present, and future all merge, come together. It's the link to the past, the yard site of the previous Rebbe, the day the Rebbe becomes Rebbe, and he laid out the blueprint for how we bring in the future, how we're going to bring Mashiach. So this is a unique day in the Jewish calendar. Past, present, and future meet. The Rebbe embodies the attribute of Malchus, of kingship. So Malchus also represents, Malchus on one hand is connected to the beginning, the Keter, crown on top of the head. Malchus represents present, time, begins with Malchus, Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Yimlech. And the Malchus becomes the crown for everything that follows. That's the creative energy with which Hashem creates everything that follows. So Malchus is like that merging point, past, present, future, all coming together. And in this Hasidic discourse, he actually discusses where it all begins, how it all began. Hashem created the world. He created the Garden of Eden. This world was a Garden of Eden. For the few hours till Adam sinned, this world actually, in actuality, was a Garden of Eden. Literally. That's what it says, Basi Lagani. It says in the Song of Songs, Hashem says, he calls this world my garden. And this is the garden that I used to live in, and this is the garden that I lived in and that I enjoyed. It gave me so much pleasure. The garden gives you pleasure. And then, as a result of Adam's sin and the sins of the following generations, Hashem became more and more abstract, relegated to the seventh heaven. completely irrelevant, completely almost erased from human consciousness. And beginning with Avraham Avinu, the very first Jew who was self-sacrifice. Avraham started the process of bringing Hashem back into Hashem's reality, back into human consciousness. And with each passing generation, Yitzchak and Yaakov and Levi and Ahaz and Amram, Hashem's presence became, this process intensified. Hashem's presence became closer and closer from the seventh heaven to the sixth heaven, the sixth heaven to the fifth heaven. And Moshe, who was the seventh, he was the instrument through which Hashem Shekhinah came back into this world. And then once again at Mount Sinai, for a brief moment, Hashem came down the mountain. The Shekhinah came back down. For a brief moment until the sin of the golden calf, Hashem, once again, this world became a Garden of Eden. It says Hashem's voice was heard, the Ten Commandments were heard from one end of the world to the other, penetrated all of reality. There was no echo. There was no part of the world resisted the message. There was no bouncing back. Hashem's presence once again permeated all of reality. And once again, this world became a Garden of Eden. Had the Jewish people not sinned with the golden calf, that would have been the end of death, which was a consequence of Adam's sin, and they would have marched straight into the land of Israel, and Mashiach would have come. But it lasted for a minute and a half, just like Adam. It wasn't Gan Eden. Adam and Chava were in Gan Eden for a minute. It lasted for a minute and a half till they sinned, and they were expelled. What does this tell us? This tells us, this completely revolutionizes our understanding of where it all began, how it all began. And it completely changes our understanding of our present reality. Because what's the Torah telling us? The Torah is telling us here. And what does it help that for a minute and a half the world is a Garden of Eden? Or Mount Sinai, once again, it was restored for a brief moment when they sinned right away. Adam sinned right away, and the golden calf right away. And 3,333 years later, we're still in exile. And it's not just what's true for the world on a global level, it's also true for us personally. Because every one of us is a microcosm of the whole world. Everything in the Torah, we go through everything in the Torah. We start out our lives as Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden. It's called our childhood. We start out as babies, as little children. We're pure, we're unself-aware, we're unself-conscious, no egoless, guileless. Just like Adam and Chava ran around naked. We're like completely unself-conscious, pure, innocent, genuine, authentic. That's why children are lie detectors. The politician picks up a baby, the child starts yelling. He can't fool the kids. You can fool everyone else with your fake smile. But children see right away if the person who picks them up loves them, they melt, they respond. If not, not. But how long does it last? This period of being in the Garden of Eden lasts for a minute and a half. When we grow up, we become self-aware, we tell our first lie, we become very clever. And when we're expelled from the Garden of Eden, we become alienated from the Garden of Eden. We become so distant, so far away from where we started. So many people, their lives become so twisted and so far removed from how they started out. What happened to that pure and innocent little child? So what does it help? We start out our life that way. But it's actually, the Torah is telling us something very powerful. The Torah is telling us that this is our true core nature. This is our essence. This is our foundation. This is our cornerstone that always remains so. You know, you only get one chance to make a first impression. This is our first impression. This is our first reality. This is our ultimate reality. This is our truth. Deep down inside, that pure, innocent little child remains. It's always there. It's always here within us. That is our true reality. The world started out as a Garden of Eden, and this was a place which gave Hashem tremendous pleasure, a garden. And this is where Hashem felt at home, and this is where Hashem was present. This is our truth. Today, it's hidden, but it's there. And therefore, It's inevitable that this core nature will triumph. This core nature will assert itself. This core nature will emerge in surface, will prevail, because this is our truth. So Judaism, it's not that the Torah is trying to get us to live a life. It's difficult, impossible, too complicated, and it's too heroic, it's otherworldly. The Torah way of life, a life of morality, of ethics, of spirituality, of kindness and goodness and righteousness and light and godliness. This is our natural. This is so natural. This is so real. On the contrary, it's everything else that's unnatural. The Torah is not asking of us, it's not a program, an unrealistic program. It's a real program for real people living in the real world, because this is the real world. This is the reality of this world. This is the reality of our personal world. This is the reality of the entire world. The core and essence of our nature and the core and essence of the nature of this world is godliness. And when we learn Torah and we do mitzvot, we're just revealing, returning, restoring the world. We're restoring the world to its original nature, to its true nature, its true essence. Everything else is a distortion. Everything else takes an inordinate amount of energy to maintain this distortion. To learn Torah, do mitzvah, to live a Jewish life, to think Jewish and speak Jewish and act Jewish, and for the non-Jews to act and act righteously, to be a righteous Gentile and to follow the 7 Noahide laws. This is the most natural thing in the world. It's everything else that's so unnatural. So it changes the lenses of how you look at the world, how you look at yourself. Suddenly it's a different world. I mean, this is so powerful. It changes everything. And that explains why the Rebbe did not play defense. And after the Holocaust, after shattering experience, not only physically, we lost 6 million Yidden, but we lost our best. Cream, crop. It was such a blow to the Jewish people, both materially and spiritually. So many religious Jews just hunkered down, played defense. Let me try to preserve the little that I have, the remnants, the refugees, the little that I have, I'll try to preserve. But how can I counter the winds that are out there, the winds of heresy and the winds of materialism? And so I'll try to preserve my little pocket of Yiddishkeit, a pocket here, a pocket there. The Rebbe, however, went on the offensive. If Basi Lagani, if this world, if Hashem calls this world my garden, the place that gives me pleasure, this is where Hashem says, I live in this world. This is where I'm found. I'm present. I'm found today. This is the core and essence of this world, is godliness. And we go on the offensive. We don't hunker down. We're not playing defense. The Rebbe went on the offensive. 5,000 Chabad houses, 5,000 personal emissaries, aggressively going to every community in the world and transforming the community, one Jew at a time, one mitzvah at a time, creating, establishing homes, a place where a Jew can feel at home, where Hashem can feel at home, and going out there and revealing that this world is really a godly place. This is part of the con of the world. This world is a world full of lies, as it says in that discourse. Alma de Shikra. Part of the lie is part of the con of this world. The world presents itself as being coarse and crass and the antithesis of godliness. That's all part of the con. We're not taken in by that con. We know the truth. This world is Hashem's world. It's Hashem's home. Hashem feels at home in this world. This world gives Hashem's pleasure. This core and essence of this world and our own personal lives is godliness. And therefore, the Rebbe started the Mitzvah campaign. Mitzvah. Get one Jew to do one mitzvah. A Jew doing one single mitzvah, putting on tefillin, perhaps for the first time in his life. A woman lighting a candle for Shabbos candle, Friday, before Shabbos, the first time in her life. Any mitzvah, eating the that mitzvah has the power to activate and ignite that core and essence of godliness. Godliness is located at the center of our being. And it has the power to change and to transform the whole world. And this was the Rebbe's message to all the shluchim. A personal message that he asked each shliach, who's his personal emissary, to transmit this message to each and every Jew living in their community. Ultimately, to every Jew in the world. To empower every Jew in the world, that they should know that we're always obligated to view the world as being on an equal scale. Maimonides. And by each and every Jew doing one single mitzvah, we single-handedly have the power to tip the scale, transform human consciousness, and bring redemption to yourself, to your family, to the whole entire world. Because all it takes is one mitzvah. The Rebbe would always say the difference between, in Hebrew, between exile and redemption, it's the same Hebrew letters, Goyla and Gula. What's the difference? Aleph. All it takes is Aleph. One Jew, Aleph, one mitzvah, to reveal Aleph, to reveal the Alufa Shalom, the Mitzvah, Matri, Nimtza, Kolam, Tzayim, to reveal the core and essence of Hashem in this world. That's all it takes. And therefore, Judaism is an activist program. The whole mitzvah, the Torah, when Hashem came back down into this world, it's through the program of Torah mitzvah. It's an activistic program because we can do something. You roll up your sleeves, and it's up to us to restore this world to its natural state, to restore ourselves to our natural state, to reveal that core and essence, that childlike purity, innocence, goodness, kindness, by doing one single mitzvah. One single mitzvah has that power. So we have to do. We live in the world of action. This is the world of action. This is where Hashem is found, and this is how we find Hashem, through action. By doing the mitzvah, encouraging every Jew that we encounter to do the mitzvah, to act Jewish, speak Jewish, think Jewish, live Jewish. And if every Jew in the world, every Jew, our community, would do one mitzvah, would literally transform the entire world. It's so doable. It's so actionable. It's so real. It's such a real program for real people living in the real world in the year 2022. And in the Maimon, the Rebbe goes on to explain that after the giving of the Torah, when Hashem's presence came back down into this world, what was the major mission of that generation? He built the tabernacle. In the desert, he built a tabernacle. Hashem says, build for me a tabernacle and I will dwell in it. And what was the tabernacle constructed from? What was it made of? It was made with cedar wood, Hatzi Kedosh, Kedesh. and the cedar wood. This was the wall of the tabernacle. It stood erect, it stood up, like trees grow straight up. It wasn't lying down, it was up. The word Kedesh, the Zohar says, the word Kedesh, if you turn the letters around, in Hebrew, it's the word sheker, lie. And you turn the letters around, and you have a Kedesh. And the cedar wood is called the beams, Kedesh, Kedesh, sheker. What were they made of? Cedar wood, it's called Atei Shittim. Shittim comes from the word shtus. Shtus means foolishness. They have different types of foolishness. You have foolishness, which is foolishness, something that's irrational, something that's silly, nonsensical. But then you also have a holy foolishness. The prophet was called Meshuggah, because a prophet, in a way, is like Meshuggah. He's not normal. He doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about power. He doesn't care about fame. He doesn't care about lust. He doesn't lust after money. He doesn't lust after his cravings. He's a human being, flesh and blood, and yet he's not something not normal about him. Everyone else is driven and motivated by ego, self-preservation, extending yourself, expanding your power, expanding your wealth, expanding your ego. And the tzaddik, the navi, the prophet, the spiritual, godly Jew couldn't care less about any of that. So the society called him Meshuggah. Maybe he was the only normal one. He was the one who was sane, and everyone else is insane. They called him Meshuggah, insane. So there's a shtus of foolishness which comes from holiness, that you're beyond the rational. A navi, someone who sees through the lies and deceptions of society, and is able to see through to the core and essence of this world, of reality, which is godliness. So the Torah is telling us that to build a Mishkan, you have to take the keresh, the beam, the sheker, and transform it into keresh, into a beam, which becomes the pillars and the walls and creates the Mishkan. You have to take the Atzei Shittim, the shtus, the madness, the foolishness, the insanity of this world, and you have to transform it into holy foolishness, something holy, something that's beyond the ordinary, beyond the rational, something heroic, something special. And this is our mission, since we are the seventh generation. Rebbe is the seventh Rebbe. We are the seventh generation from the Alter Rebbe. This generation, we are the last generation of the old order of exile, and we will be the first generation of the new order of Mashiach. We will see and live to see the rebuilding of the third Beis Hamikdash and the ingathering of the exiles, and the whole world at peace, and all 7 to 8 billion people in this world becoming righteous Gentiles, becoming moral, ethical, and spiritual and godly, following the 7 Noahide laws. Every Jew in the world will be a proud Jew and proudly live their Judaism, act Jewish, and speak Jewish, and think Jewish. It's all going to happen. Our generation. We are the generation going to land the ship. We are the generation that's going to mission accomplish. We're going to get the job done. So we were empowered to be able to transform darkness into light, bitterness into sweetness, negativity into something positive, sin into a mitzvah. We are the generation that can take the sheker, the lie, and build from it and turn it into a beam of the temple, turn it into a temple, a sanctuary, a holy place in a desert. To take a desert and turn it into an oasis, a place where Hashem feels at home, a garden of Eden. And to take the shtus, Atzei Shittim, to take the foolishness of this world and to transform it into something holy foolishness, something special. Sort. Where do we see that? The Rebbe, we saw that by the Rebbe. The Rebbe embodied it. There was one favorite, just to give one example, there's one favorite theme of the Rebbe. He would always say, he would always quote the Talmud. Talmud says that a person has $100. You want $200. Person who has $200 now wants $400. You want to double. Because the person is always greedy. Talmud says a person doesn't die and half of your craving you fulfill. You're always greedy, especially when it comes to lust for money. The lust for money is insatiable. As Rabbeinu Bechaya points out, he says the Hebrew word for money is mammon. Mammon is, if you write it out the way it sounds, each letter, mem, is you write it out, mem, mem. Mammon, another mem, vav, the way it sounds, you write it out, it's vav, vav. Nun, again, nun, nun. Because the lust for money is such, that whatever you have, you only feel you have half. You want double. You have 100, no, I want to, I'm missing 100. You have 200, I'm missing 200. Not I have 200, I feel like I'm missing 200. I need 400. You have 400, I'm missing 400. That's the way it goes. The mem, I'm missing another mem. I'm missing a vav. I'm missing a nun. That's the nature of money. The nature of lust for money is so powerful. And we know that. We're living in a capitalistic society. The lust for money is insatiable. Every other lust in this world, there is a point where you do reach a point of satisfaction. You're hungry. You want a good meal, a tasty meal, delicious meal. Okay, you have your meal. Okay, I'm satisfied. At least an hour or two. In America, you're constantly snacking. At least for the moment, I'm satisfied. You have a lust, sexual desires. Okay, then you reach a moment of you're satiated, at least for a brief moment, and then you lust again. But the lust for money is the exception. It's insatiable. A person who has money, he can't rest. It's 24/7. He dreams about money, he lusts money, on weekends, on vacations. You just can't stop. You want 100, no, I want a million. I have a million, I want 10 million. I want 10 million, I want 100 million. 100 million, I want a billion, I want a billion, I want to reach 100 billion, a trillion. It's never ending. It's all consuming. You just can never get enough. So that's what the Talmud is saying. So the Talmud is describing something that's negative. It's human nature. Human nature is insatiable. Our appetites are insatiable. We'll burn the house down. Our appetites are just simply insatiable. We can never get enough. We have no life. It's like it's never ending. You're never satisfied. You never have enough. You're never happy. Whatever you have, you feel like you're missing. I have a billion, I'm missing a billion. Not like I have a billion, I'm happy, I'm grateful, I'm satisfied, and I'm giving tzedakah. By the way, it never happens. You give tzedakah when you don't have money, you continue to give when you have. Those who don't give when they don't have, say, I'll have a million, and of course I'll start giving. You know, it never happens, because I know what's a million. A million is nothing. I have 10 million. 10 million, when I have 100 million, a billion, he's long in his grave before he gave a single cent. That's not the way it works. It's insatiable, it's never enough, it's innate greed. Person who's greedy is hungry, and you never satisfy that greed. You never, ever, ever, ever satisfy that greed until you're dying and you're still only half of what you wanted because you're always missing the other half. You're always yearning for the other half that you don't have. And therefore, how can I give tzedakah when I don't have? I have 10 billion, but there's 10 billion that I don't have yet. Sorry, I can't give it away. You know. So the Rebbe took this concept, this human nature, and the Rebbe turned it around. And he said, we have to use this nature for holiness. You accomplished 100. You've had a tremendous accomplishment. You did something incredible in holiness, in Yiddishkeit, a breakthrough. No, that's all you did. Don't look at the 100 that you accomplished. There's 100 you did not yet do. You didn't yet accomplish. You have 100, now you want 200. You did 200, tremendous, wonderful. No, now you can do 400. So the Rebbe took the lie of this world, the ego of this world, the human nature, the greedy, lustful human nature of this world, and the Rebbe turned it around and built from it a tabernacle, turned it into something holy. We always knew for 3,800 years, this is the nature of holiness. Tu B'Shvat is around the corner. We know that the sign of life is growth. In holiness, Mailim B'Kodesh, you always have to continue to grow and progress and to go further. Einstein said, life is like a bicycle. Why is life like a bicycle? He says, firstly, if you stand still, you fall off. You got to constantly move. If things are going easy and smooth, you're going downhill. Things are difficult, you're going uphill, you're climbing. Fine. So, we always knew that holiness, by definition, you have to climb and you have to grow. And if you have 100, you have to learn 101 times. 15th chapter in Tanya, you always have to grow. Like on Hanukkah. Every night you have to add a candle. You can't just light the same candles you lit last night. Every night you have to grow. That's the sign of growth, a sign of holiness, a sign of. But Hanukkah, you light one extra candle. You learned 100 times. I add one time, and that's good. You have to grow. It's the quality. It's not the quantity. You grow. But to take a concept that if I accomplish 100, now we want 200, double. 200, 400. This is a negative concept. The Talmud is describing something negative. Man's lust, insatiable appetite, impossible, ridiculous, absurd, hunger, cravings. You're never happy. You're never satisfied. Your life is no life. You have no life. You're so busy accumulating. You don't have a moment to live. The Rebbe took this negative quality, this shtus, this sheker, this lie, and he turned it into something holy. We have to take this sheker, this world, and transform it into a holy place for Hashem, a dwelling place for Hashem, a garden of Eden to Hashem. Take this nature, this insatiable nature, and turn it into holiness. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe was never happy. My brother-in-law, Rabbi Shia Hecht from Norwalk, Connecticut, once went with his uncle for dollars, get $1 from the Rebbe. His uncle is Rabbi Moshe Hechel of Shalom from New Haven, Connecticut. And he was telling the Rebbe about a big breakthrough that he had, or a tremendous achievement, accomplishment that he had in the school, I believe, in New Haven. The Rebbe responded in Yiddish. My brother-in-law was there. He heard the Rebbe tell him, he says, Ramosh. The Rebbe says, you know that whatever you tell me, I'm never going to be happy. because you had a great accomplishment. That's wonderful. But you have 100. Now get 200. You shouldn't dwell on the 100 that you accomplished. There's 100 that you still could accomplish. If there's an insatiable lust, we should also have an insatiable hunger to serve Hashem, to double and triple and quadruple and give Hashem more and more and accomplish so much more. Transforming the negative into positive. To turn the sheker. Of course, the smallest thing that the sign of truth is, on the other hand, the smallest thing is genuine. The smallest movement, the smallest mitzvah, the tiniest improvement, the tiniest growth would give the Rebbe tremendous time, because it's enough to tip the scale. If something is genuine, if something is real, then if it's only 99.9%, then it's false. It's not real. If it's real, it's 100%. If something is real, even 1% of that reality is also genuine. Is also 100%. Just like the drop of the ocean reflects the entire sun, just like the whole entire ocean. So every mitzvah, one Jew doing one mitzvah, reflects the infinite, has the power to create this nuclear energy and transform human consciousness and to activate and ignite the core and essence of godliness that's located at the center of our personal being, and has the power to ignite and to reveal the core and essence of godliness is located in the entire world. One single mitzvah. But on the other hand, for that very same reason, when you accomplish 100%, now I want 200. You have to give Hashem 200. You're able to do this. You prove that you're able to do 100. Now double. You prove that you can do 200. Double that. Now quadruple. Now do 400, etc. So this was how the Rebbe showed us that our generation was empowered. This was never demanded of any other generation. Our generation. We are the midgets of all the generations. We are the souls of the feet. And yet our generation is unique. Our generation, the seventh generation, was empowered. Hashem gave us the power to accomplish this, to be able to transform the darkness into light, to take this negative human nature and to transform it and serve Hashem with it and turn it into a tabernacle, into a dwelling place for Hashem. So we are the seventh generation. We are that special generation that has that ability to bring the Shekhinah back into this world. We are the soles of the feet that are going to carry the entire organism. The entire organism rests on the bottom of the feet. We are going to lead, take Moshe Rabbeinu into the Holy Land and all Jewish generations and all of Jewish history. We're going to lead the entire Klal Yisrael into the promised land, we are the ones who create the future, who are bringing the future, who are, through our actions, through our mitzvahs, our serving Hashem today, here and now, we merge past, present, and future together. In the Maimah, the Hasidic discourse, the first Maimah that Rebbe gave, he discusses the incredible Avos Yisrael, incredible examples the Rebbe's set for us. Because this was the hallmark of the Hasidic movement. Love your fellow Jew like yourself. It says in the Zohar, Yisrael, the Jewish people and the Torah and Hashem are all one. But the order of the Torah also teaches us. It should have said, you would think it would say, Hashem is Torah and the Jewish people are one. The Zohar starts out, the Jewish people, the Torah and Hashem are one. The Rebbe explains because it has to start with love your fellow Jew like yourself. If someone starts out with loving Hashem, I don't know if he truly loves Hashem. As Maimonides says, it could be completely delusional. Spirituality could be the ultimate ego trip. You're not thinking about Hashem, you're thinking about yourself and your greatness and your perfection and your completion and your share in the world to come. Ego. It's never-ending ego. Usually a person dies, your ego comes to an end. Here, it's the eternal ego. Your ego never ends. It's I, and my share in the world to come, and my reward, and I. So you think you're serving Hashem, it's completely delusional. You love Torah? Who says you love Torah? You think you love Torah. Lahavdil, there are many goyim who spend their days and nights studying and thinking and writing. They just enjoy. They're just introverts, and they just love to intellectualize. They don't care about the money and power. They just love to think and to write and to teach and to live in the world of ideas. That's what gives them pleasure. Who says it has anything to do with godliness? Who says it's genuine? Who says there's anything godly about it? Just because you sit and learn Torah all day doesn't mean anything. But when you love your fellow Jew like yourself, that's 100% genuine. My ego doesn't dictate that I should care about another person. I care more about my pinky and millions of people dying in Africa. What do I care? My pinky hurts. It's the beginning and the middle, the end of the whole world. Why would I care about another Jew? Love my fellow Jew like myself. Why? It's only because it's godly, because it's genuine, because it's real, because there's a God in this world. And we all have literally a piece of the divine essence And the other Jew is me, and I am the other Jew, and that's why I love my fellow Jew like myself. So when you love your fellow Yid like yourself, and you do something selfless to help someone else, that is godly. And that's the springboard, and that will spark my love for the Torah and my love for Hashem. That's the gateway. That's how I know that my love for Hashem is real, and my love for the Torah is real. That's why if there's Torah and there's no love of your fellow Jew, if the Torah makes you fuels your arrogance and you become some ivory tower intellectual and removes you from your fellow Jew, you become more and more haughty and arrogant and distant from your fellow Jew, less compassionate, less humble, less modest, then you know you and the Torah have no connection. You and Hashem have zero connection. It's just an intellectual pursuit. But when it starts out with loving your fellow Jew like yourself, Yisrael, it will definitely, inevitably lead you to love of Torah and love of Hashem. So the order is also, and this was the whole revolution of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov said, "We have to love your fellow Jew literally like you love yourself." Nachmanides argued that it's impossible to love your fellow Jew like yourself. That's he says, come with only like yourself, not really like yourself. You can't love anyone like you love yourself. It just means treat everyone else like you like to be treated. You don't like when anyone insults you, don't insult anyone else. You like to be treated respectfully, treat everyone else respectfully, give them the benefit of the doubt, just like you like to be given the benefit of the doubt, etc. Comes along the Baal Shem Tov and says, no, literally like you love yourself. That's how you have to love your fellow Jew. Meaning, why do you love yourself? Do you love yourself because it's a mitzvah? Because it says in the Torah you should love yourself? No. You don't need a mitzvah to love yourself. It's the most natural thing in the world. We love ourselves naturally. Our self-love is unconditional. It's the most natural thing in the world. Comes the Torah and says, literally, just like you love yourself, don't love your fellow Jew because it's a religious commandment. Mitzvah 343. Kedoshim. Not because it's a mitzvah to love your fellow Jew because it's a commandment. No. Love your fellow Jew just like you love yourself. It should be natural. Because the other Jew is myself. I am the other Jew, and the other Jew is myself. We're all one. We all have the same piece of the divine essence. That's located at the core and essence, the center of my being. That's who I am. That's who he is. What makes me Jewish is that piece of the divine essence. That Jew has the same piece of the divine essence. You are me, I am you, and we're all one. And therefore, I love my fellow Jew literally like I love myself. There's the analogy in the Jerusalem Talmud, in the right hand and the left hand. The Torah says, don't take revenge. And don't bear a grudge. So there's the Jerusalem Talmud gives an analogy. It says, imagine if your right hand poured some hot water on your left hand. So what, your left hand is going to slap your right hand? It's your hand. Who are you slapping? You, the right hand, the left hand, we're all one. It's one organism. We're all one. The Jewish people, we're all one. We're brothers, we're sisters, we're one living organism, dynamic living organism. So what I'm insulting and hurting my fellow Jew, it's taking revenge, bearing a grudge, it's me. So the Rebbe gave examples of each of the Rebbes, the tremendous love of your fellow Jew like yourself. Tremendous love that they had. Each Rebbe, he goes by each Rebbe. So I'll just conclude. There's a beautiful stories of the Frierdiker Rebbe and of the Rebbe. So, beautiful story. I think it was in 1948, 47. I don't know exactly, maybe it was 46. Anyway, the Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting in his house, and suddenly his face, he became like very rigid. Like he wasn't himself. He looked very, and the nurse got very nervous. Maybe God forbid if Frierdiker Rebbe is having something medical, and she went running to the wife and family and didn't know what to do. They said, call the Rebbe, call the son-in-law, the Rebbe. He'll know what to do. So they called the Rebbe up. The Rebbe went in. He looked at the Frierdiker Rebbe and he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe is moving his lips. So he told the family, everything is okay. Don't worry. Nothing to worry about. There's no medical issues. The Rebbe himself told the story. The Rebbe was in Paris when he came to greet his mother, who was smuggled out of Russia after the war. And he came to greet her and bring her to America. So the night before he left, he had a fabrengen. He fabrenged all night. He went around the room asking everyone what their name is, telling them the meaning of their name. I had a great uncle then who had 3 names, Shulim, Zusia. They said, oh, with you, I have a lot to say on your names. And Shulim Krasniansky. And the Rebbe, a few Chassidim asked the Rebbe to please intervene with the Frierdiker Rebbe, because they were trying to get visas to come to America and they needed the help of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and it was taking a long time. So the Rebbe answered, you're asking me that I should intervene with my father-in-law, with the Rebbe, to help you? Let me tell you who the Frierdiker Rebbe is. And he told him the story that happened with him. They all got excited, they all got nervous. The Frierdiker Rebbe was suddenly went like a trance, and his face was all pale, and he was like, and they thought something is happening to him, and they called the Rebbe into the room. The Rebbe says he was moving his lips, and the Rebbe bent down, and he was listening what the Frierdiker Rebbe was saying, and he was saying, Oz Yasher. Oz Yasher Moshe, today's Parsha. This Yud Shvat is this Chumash. The reading that we're going to read, the Yud Shvat of Wednesday, is Oz Yasher, the song. And that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe was moving his lips and he was saying, Oz Yasher. That's what the Rebbe says, don't worry. What happened? Later on, they found out. At that time, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting there and he was saying Oz Yasher, and the family got all excited, they didn't know what was happening. A group of Hasidim were smuggling themselves out of Russia. How did they smuggle themselves out of Russia? Because Stalin allowed, no one could leave Russia. It was the Iron Curtain. Like in Egypt, not a single slave could leave. But during the war, a lot of the Polish people were Stalin's guests. They were sent to Siberia. But after the war, he allowed them to leave Russia and to go back to Poland. Of course, most of them died. Many of them died. So the Hasidim would buy the passports from these the Polish people who died, didn't need it anymore, and they posed as Polish people going back. There's no pictures then. They had the passport, the name, going back. The problem is they didn't speak a word of Polish. They were Russians. It was very dangerous. You're talking about Stalinist Russia. They were caught. They would all go to jail, Siberia, or be killed. This was serious crime. Escape Russia, escape the Garden of Eden, the Russian Garden of Eden. And there was a group of Hasidim. And the Russian guards there started getting suspicious. A whole group of Hasidim from Russia. They weren't Polish, they didn't look Polish. They had all these fake passports. And the Hasidim were trying to give him a little l'chaim and get him a little drunk and, bribe him a little. They shouldn't look too closely and they shouldn't pay attention. And their life was in danger. There were many groups that passed, and there were people who were caught and people who died. And there's a whole group. And they figured out later that was the time that the Frierdiker Rebbe was sitting in 770 in Brooklyn, in Crown Heights. that's the time when he went into like this trance, and he was like, his face turned, and he was moving his lips. He was saying, "Az Yashem Moshe," that the Jewish people should pass, able to cross the sea. And thank God, it all worked out. They were able to get the guard drunk, to get him, not to pay attention, and they all passed. But it was a miracle. The Frierdiker Rebbe was making this miracle happen. While this is all going on, the Frierdiker Rebbe was there making this whole miracle happen. So the Rebbe is telling the Hasidim, he says, you're asking me to intervene with the Frierdiker Rebbe. I have to tell him to care about you. You think he does? I mean, his whole life is love your fellow Yid like yourself, literally. He lives for his fellow Yid. So I don't have to tell him anything. He's looking out for you, and he's doing whatever is possible could be done. This is just one story, incredible Avos Yisrael. And there's a beautiful story of the Rebbe himself. The Rebbe, of course, talks about all the other Rebbes, the 6 Rebbes before him. He doesn't tell a story about himself. But we know there's a story that happened that night, the night before the Rebbe accepted the mantle, officially accepted. The night before the Farbrengen, the night of the Yartzeit, the beginning, first night. The Farbrengen was the night after, like tomorrow night. So this was like tonight, 71 years ago. And there was no one in the secretarial office. It was at night. There was no one there. Rabbi Moshe Groner, he was the brother of Rabbi Leibel Groner, happened to be there. And then here's the phone ringing. He ignores it because he's not part of the secretariat. He was just in the room. But the phone is ringing, ringing, and ringing. Okay, so he picks up the phone. It was the Rebbe. The Rebbe asked, is anyone from the secretariat around? He said, no, they all left home. There's no one here. It was at night. So the Rebbe asked him, Moshe, can you do me a favor? Can you come to my house? Come to my apartment. The Rebbe lived then on President and New York Avenue. So Moshe comes to the Rebbe's house. The Rebbe meets him at the door, and the Rebbe says, do me a favor. I'm trying to reach this doctor. It's very important. There's a Yid in the hospital, and I have to get this doctor to come to visit him. It's very urgent, and I can't reach him. Do me a favor. There was a phone, this was in 1951. There was a public phone in the lobby, in the hallway, in the lobby. He says, try to stand here and try to reach him, and then let me know when you get it. So he finally reaches him. He says, the Rebbe wants to speak to you. So he goes to the Rebbe, he tells him, I have him on the line. He didn't want to overhear the conversation. It was a private conversation. So he goes into the Rebbe's house, the Rebbe's apartment. And he sees the Rebbe's library, there's books all over the table. All the books, the references that the Rebbe quoted in the Hasidic discourse that he was going to say the next night, the inaugural Farbrengen was going to say the inaugural Maimer, the Maimer of Vasilagani. And he saw a notebook, the Rebbe's notes. There's a similar Maimer the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out 2 years earlier than that, in 1948. And the Rebbe made notes in the Maimer, and it was all open, and the Rebbe was like studying, preparing for the Maimer. And the Rebbe comes in. The Rebbe tells him, Moshe, do me a favor. I have to go to the hospital. The doctor agreed to go to the hospital on one condition, if I go together with him. Because it was after hours. He wasn't really interested. But if I'll go with him, he'll go with me, and we'll go together. So do me a favor. There's a few books I'm still looking for. I still need. He gave him a list of the books mentioned in the Maimer, some Kabbalistic books. If you can find it for me, and while I go out to the house. So imagine this is the night, the Yartzeit, the first Yartzeit, the night that Rebbe is preparing for his inaugural Farbrengen. Probably the most important night of his life. Except the day he got married, and the Rebbe dropped everything. And he took a time, precious time, and the Rebbe every minute was like a year, as the previous Rebbe said about the Rebbe. By him, a minute is like a year. And that night, the most important night of his life, and the Rebbe dropped everything to help a Yid, because he had to run with the doctor to go to the hospital to help someone, a Yid who needed help, needed some medical attention, needed some help. You talk about the incredible Avos Yisrael, the love your fellow Yid like yourself, literally like you love yourself without calculation, just like we love ourselves. We drop all calculations, we'll do anything for ourselves. So to drop all calculations and just to be there and help another Yid physically, materially, spiritually, whatever it may be. And this is the love that the Rebbe instilled in us, that all the Rebbes. And this is the whole program. We love a Yid. The reason why Chabad is so successful in connecting with so many Yidden is because every Yid feels that this love is no strings attached. There's no agendas. It's not like I have an agenda. I want you to get you to put on tefillin. I'll be nice to you, I'll smile to you, nice to you, because I want something. It's calculated. I'm trying to get something from you. So it's a nice way to get it. I'll be nice to you. And if I don't get what I want, I'm out of here. I'm not interested. I have no time for you. I know I'm wasting my time. No, it's not calculated. I love you unconditionally. No strings attached. You will put on tefillin. You won't put on tefillin. I love you. You're a Yid. I'm a Yid. You're just as a Yid as I am. Your core in essence is godly. We're all connected. We're all the same. I love you unconditionally. Because I love you, I know that you will never be happy. You will never be fulfilled. You will never be a well-adjusted human being, person, until you embrace your Yiddishkeit, until you put on the tefillin and light the candles and follow the mitzvahs and study Torah and connect with Hashem, until you're proud of your Yiddishkeit, consciously proud of your Yiddishkeit, and consciously live a Jewish life, and your faith is that faith that it emerges and surfaces in all its glory. You will never be whole. You'll never be satisfied. You'll never be content. But if I'm not successful, I love you unconditionally. There's no strings attached. I don't have any agendas. Whatever you need help physically, whatever it is. You never talk to me again, doesn't matter. I'm here to help, period. I'll do anything. Doesn't matter, Reform, conservative, Orthodox, unaffiliated, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew, any Jew. Even the most self-hating Jew is 100% Jewish, 1,000% Jewish. On the contrary, he just proves the point how Jewish he is. You've never met a self-hating Irishman, a self-hating Italian. Only a Jew could be so self-hating. You're so Jewish. You just proved how Jewish you are. So we're all Jewish and we're all connected and we're all one. And therefore we love each other unconditionally. Therefore we're there for each other. And that's why the shluchim dropped everything and went to any place in the world just to be there with their fellow Jew, to help their fellow Jew, a Jew they've never seen, a Jew they've never met before, a Jew. But we're there for each other, and we're there. And that's what moves the other Yid. The other Yid sees this is for real. It's not a program. It's not an agenda. It's not Kirov Rechaik. A beautiful story, the Alter Rebbe. The Hasidim in town tried to draw close. This Yid, it was like a playboy. He wasn't. And they tried to bring him close and with lovingly tried to reconnect him with his Judaism, with his Yiddishkeit. And year after year, no movement, no change, no success. So they asked Alter Rebbe, we're pouring all this energy and all this effort and we don't see any results. The Rebbe said, he says, if this person would think 10 negative thoughts a day, but as a result of you drawing him in with ropes, with love and drawing him in, instead he only thinks 9 negative thoughts. You can't imagine the infinite pleasure that gives Hashem. One good thought, one less negative thought, one good word and one less negative word, one positive good deed and one less negative good deed. We can't even imagine the infinite pleasure it gives Hashem. This is Hashem's garden. We give Hashem this pleasure. This is where Hashem lives. This is what Hashem hopes for. This is what Hashem wants. This is what Hashem desires. This is what Hashem demands of us. This is what Hashem expects of us. It's here and now. It's us. This is the time. We are the generation. We are the ones who are empowered to get the job done. We will cross the finishing line, and we're going to carry the entire Klal Yisrael. And until we'll be able to say mission accomplished, in our generation, we will have our Yutes Chav Kislev, just like the Alter Rebbe and his generation had their Yutes and Chav Kislev, just like the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, and his generation had their Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. Our generation, we will be able to say mission accomplished. We will have the Rebbe and our generation. We are going to have our Yutes Chav Kislev and our Yud Beis Yud Tammuz, which we did not have as of yet. That will be the actual coming of Mashiach, the actual rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, the actual ingathering of the exiles, and the entire world will be transformed. Human consciousness will be transformed, and the core and essence of godliness is located at the center of our being, at the center of this world, will emerge and surface in all its glory, and we'll see that this world is a garden of Eden, a world that gives Hashem pleasure. The Rebbe once said this purpose in the Chabad houses. And the Chabad house should be a place where the Alter Rebbe feels at home. Every Chabad house in the world, 5,000 Chabad houses, a place where the Alter Rebbe feels at home. It's genuine Yiddishkeit, it's authentic Yiddishkeit, it's all its glory and it's all its power and it's all its force and all its joy and might and soul and genuineness and authenticity and nothing less. We uncompromising, and this is something that we will accomplish, we will achieve with Hashem's help. There's no better day, there's no more auspicious day for this to come to fruition than tonight and tomorrow. This is Yud Shvat, 72 years, Hashem's name, ultimate name, 72 letters. This is the 72 years of the Yahrzeit, and 72 years of the Rebbe. So there's no better time, no more auspicious time than now. Hashem should bring Mashiach, and we should live to see and experience the coming of Mashiach now. And may it happen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Thank you, Rabbi. Shkoyach.
So, is that what you learned in the Maimer?
Almost.
Almost.
We learn to appreciate and love. Thank you very much, Rebbe.
Okay. So Mitch Hashem next week, with Hashem's help, we'll go back to the Siddur.